Welcome into the Plus Studio. I'm Isaiah Kim Martinez, and we have our guest here today, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman of Kentucky, the Democrat who just recently announced that she will be running for governor in 2027. I guess the race kicks off now. Lieutenant Governor, thanks for taking the time.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, the race kicked off last Monday. We launched last Monday and have been all over the state more than usual. And we're just meeting voters where they are and listening and working to continue delivering results.
And, it was interesting. I sort of timed the comparison to when Andy Beshear, the current governor, you guys kicked off your campaign. It was in 2019, July. So you have them beat by about 4 months. I have talked to some folks kind of watching this, and they said it is relatively early. What was the thinking behind announcing, more than a year ahead of a primary?
Yeah, so, after going through 2 statewide elections, I think the best thing that the governor and I did was get in at the time first, and we were early to do that. And it was necessary because we needed to be able to build the infrastructure of a good campaign so that we could meet voters where they are and travel the state and listen and do all the things that we needed to do to feel prepared to run. And so that felt right to me right now. It was post-legislative session, kind of pre-Derby, pre-summer, and so getting in and getting launched and being the first one out of the gate was really important to me, and I think it's already served us pretty well.
Was the thought process as well being that you knew that there'd be other competitors within the Democratic field and you wanted to be the first to kind of get ahead on maybe the name identification, things of that nature?
Well, I think the challenging thing about campaigns is, and it's very unfortunate, especially for somebody who is a teacher, is how much it costs to run a campaign. And so the earlier you get in, you cannot fundraise until you file to run for office. And so the earlier you get in, the earlier you can start that fundraising process. And as somebody who's a teacher, and all I think about is like how many school lunches that donation could buy, it's hard for me, but it's important. And it's like the governor used to say, campaigns aren't all about money, but a good campaign costs money. Yeah.
You and the governor come from slightly different backgrounds.
Yep.
Obviously, where you grew up, you're Mercer County, right? He grew up, to some degree, he saw his father later in life obviously run and be governor for a couple terms, but you have a political background as well. And you, I believe back in, 2014, started up your own nonprofit to get others, other women elected to office. And I believe you ran yourself for state representative one year, correct?
Yeah, so I come from a family where my dad was a state representative from the time I was in kindergarten until I think I graduated college. And so honestly, that has a lot to do with why I went into teaching government, because we had very different conversations around the dinner table than maybe my friends' families did. And so I can remember thinking, I want to teach government so I can help young people understand how government works, and also so that they would know what to do when it doesn't work for them. And so that was a very, I think, an influential piece of my life, because it's what led me into the profession that I love. Having grown up, I think it was my great-great-grandfather was Kentucky's state ag commissioner and state auditor. And so that's a few generations ago, but, part of the line. But public service has always been really important in our family, whether that was through teaching, whether that's through serving. My family also had a small business called Coleman's Lumberyard for a long time. So there's a lot of ways to serve, and I think I found mine.
Can you walk me through the conversation? Because I'm sure you and the governor have talked about this in the past. I asked him specifically about your launch, and, he gave me the answer that, he believes that you have the ability to win and that you are a good candidate. What has he said to you about your running in this race, and how similar is your campaign going to be to his in the past?
Yeah, so, the thing, it's like you said, the governor and I are from different places with different backgrounds, and I do believe that's why it's made us such a good team, because we are very different people, but we were always committed to the same mission, right? So this gave us the opportunity to learn from each other. Being the lieutenant governor candidate on 2 statewide campaigns, serving this administration in ways that he has asked me to and allowed me to lead in certain ways, I think has been really beneficial. We've had a lot of conversations about this. I don't know that I want to disclose the private conversations that we have, but I will say this: he has been a great resource. He's been a great mentor, and I do believe that I've learned a lot from being able to serve alongside him. I hope he can say the same about me. But it's really been an amazing experience that I think every day about how lucky I am to be in this role, how much I've learned, and how much it's played a part in me believing that I'm ready to be the next governor.
You know, you had a quote that I'm sure other news outlets picked up on as well, but you basically were telling the folks at your campaign launch event, what Kentuckians want. And you said they want, quote, not the cable news culture wars of the day, but a governor who'll continue to fight for Kentuckians and against the chaos and toxic negativity coming out of Washington, D.C. That sounds a lot like Governor Beshear. I mean, I wanted to ask again, how similar will your campaign be to his? I mean, are you really trying to lean into sort of his worry about 100% of the time about the issues that affect 80% of people? Like, how similar do you find those campaigns being?
You know, I think the campaign will come to shape in a way that reflects what Kentuckians are looking for in their next leader. It's the conversation I've had with folks for years now as I prepared for this. And so I wouldn't say I'm trying to be like another campaign or not like another campaign. I'm really being myself. Showing up for people and being responsive to what they want to hear and what they want to see in their leadership. And the thing I hear every single day, no matter where I am, is, please don't turn into one of these DC politicians. Please don't let all of that negativity seep into Kentucky. You guys have done such a great job keeping it out. And so that's what I believe Kentuckians want to continue. I also think they want to know that they've got somebody that will stand up for them and fight for them. And, that's really who I have been for my students and my players, for my community, and it's who I'm going to be for the Commonwealth, too.
Let's put it this way. Say maybe you take one thing from him and one thing that you feel like you'll do maybe quite a bit differently from him when running and maybe as governor. Yeah. Give me one each if you could.
Yeah. So I'll say this. One of the things I took from our first campaign was launching and traveling the state in the first several days to get to every corner of the state and meet Kentuckians where they are. I thought that was really important. I really liked that we did that the first time, and I think it made a big difference in how we were able to kind of launch that campaign all across Kentucky. So I did kind of take that from our first run. How I might be different than the governor.
Even in governing style.
Yeah.
Like something that you find like, oh, maybe I do that a little differently than you would.
I think we approach conversations with folks about maybe the challenges that we face differently. The governor is one where he likes to go into maybe he likes to go into a meeting and have a solution in mind and really rally folks around that and build capacity in that way, which I think is a really strong way to lead, of course. I'm a little bit different in that way because I like to, I may have my own preconceived notions and my own idea of what a solution might be, but I want to hear feedback from people before I make that call and build capacity around it. And so I'm much more of I think, throw out a challenge and get some feedback from people, get some different perspectives around the table that I agree with and I might not agree with, just to keep me honest and balanced. And so we're a little bit different just in, I think, that approach. But I think that's also the difference between a teacher and an attorney, right? That's just like a natural thing.
You said it. Yeah. I was kind of thinking that. I mean, when you're in a classroom, right, with a bunch of kids who you're trying to educate for the future, that might be a little bit of a different tactic, a dynamic. And speaking on dynamics, I wanted to ask about Frankfort, because if you were elected to this position, undoubtedly one of the first things you're going to be asked is how are you going to work with Republicans in Frankfort? You mentioned universal pre-K. The governor has tried that for multiple budget sessions. It has not worked. Taking what you just said, how do you approach that differently to actually make headway on that with those in power? Yeah,
so I think a couple things. One, I have worked to build relationships with legislators on both sides of the aisle as lieutenant governor, and I've done so really starting with the legislators that either have worked in public education before or have a passion for it, and those have served me well. We may not agree on everything, but if we can agree that we want to put our kids first, we want to support the people who show up for our kids every day, and we want to make sure our schools have what they need so that they can do what we need them to do, then I'll work with anybody who believes in that, right? But I would actually go back to teaching on this one, because teachers don't get to pick the kids who walk through their classroom door, right? And to really be able to help a student believe that they belong, that they're part of that classroom community, to trust you and to actually want to learn from you, you have to build relationships with them first. And so as governor and lieutenant governor, we don't get to pick our legislature just like they don't get to pick their governor. But we're all tasked with the same responsibility of serving the public. Mm-hmm. And so those relationships that I have worked on for years, I think are really important. But I think it's also important that we, again, keep our eye on the ball. And that's why I think it's so critical with the conversation we just had about keeping the culture wars and the DC politics out of it, because to me that's a distraction that doesn't serve anybody. If we can stay focused on the things that matter, you can say and do and think whatever you want to about the other stuff, right? Whatever your district may want you to reflect. But staying focused on those major issues are the things that matter.
Say I'm a Republican lawmaker in Frankfurt right now, and I tell you, hey, universal pre-K, I hear what you're saying, but we're afraid it's going to close down some private child care centers, and it just costs too much. We don't think we can use sports betting money. What's your argument right back to me? Yeah,
so, let me say this too before I answer that question. I wish that we had built the coalition around the Pre-K Advisory Council earlier. I think if we had done that in our, first budget or maybe our second budget, we would have been able to get it farther down the road. And so that's something that I think I want to continue on, but from the very beginning.
Why did we wait?
At first, I think we assumed that it would be a nonpartisan, no-brainer issue, and it got turned into a partisan issue. And so those lines were drawn. And if we had built a coalition first of local elected officials, local leaders, teachers, parents, school leaders, I think that we would have been able to bring that along farther in the first place. So I would say that that's how I would begin, rather than only including a line item in the budget, because I don't think we can take for granted that anything will be considered nonpartisan at first, even if it's 4-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. But to be able to...
Because Republicans sort of insinuate that the governor's sort of twisting arms here, that he's getting all these superintendents and just all at once to say, yeah, we're all for this. And that's not sitting well with them. So I just wonder kind of your thought on maybe trying to your point, in maybe trying to maybe revamp the method maybe, or?
Yeah, as somebody who was part of building that coalition, I didn't get that. I didn't see that. I didn't experience that. What we really did was we found people who want pre-K to come on board. We created that advisory council to travel the state and listen to communities, and that's how we crafted the legislation. And so I don't think it was as much arm twisting as it was coalition building, quite frankly. But I think talking to legislators about this and getting the response that we can't afford it. My response to that would be we can't afford not to. We are now 20 years behind Oklahoma, 20 years behind West Virginia. We have companies from all over the world who want to set up shop here. We've got to make sure that we have every opportunity and we get every advantage to say, hey, when your workforce comes here or when we build a workforce here, here's what we want to be able to offer as part of an incentive package, is that we have pre-K for all. That's a huge burden for so many families for the costs and all of those things. And so it's also something that I know our schools want to do. And so there were a few pieces to this that as a teacher, I said we have to make sure we focus on. We have to create a plan that we can roll out over a certain number of years. If the bill came to the governor and he signed it and we were under the impression it was just going to happen tomorrow, that's not realistic. We have to have a rollout. We have to build a workforce. And we also have to make sure that we are funding transportation for these students. Those are the three big barriers that I knew our local school districts were concerned about. And so we kept that front and center as we created this plan.
And to your point, you said at your campaign launch, you said we can invest in our kids on the front end, or we are literally going to pay for it on the back end. So That's the argument you're making there. Just a few more topics here. your race, there's a lot of chatter about who might hop into the Democratic side. I'm sure you're no stranger to this. I mean, we hear Rocky Adkins' name pop out constantly, and it makes sense. He's run for governor in the past. He's been the Democratic leader in the House in the past for several years, both in the majority and the minority. He's got great relationships, I hear, in Frankfort, including across the aisle. Is that something you're expecting to happen in the primary?
I really just think that this race will be what it will be. One of the things that I do believe that people are tired of, and quite frankly, I'm tired of, is that when folks run for office, they tend to focus on other politicians. You could look at the races that are going on right now, for example. You hear people running for office in Kentucky saying the name of someone who doesn't live in Kentucky more than they talk about the people that they want to represent. And I just don't want to be that kind of person. And so I know why I'm running. I'm running because I believe that every Kentuckian, regardless of their zip code, deserves a shot at a better tomorrow, especially our kids and our grandkids. And whatever this race becomes will be what it will be, but that's where I'm going to stay focused.
Another quick policy question. You mentioned mental health a lot in your initial speech. Is there a policy or an initiative right now where you're like, okay, in conjunction with lawmakers, we could get this done to help kids?
I do believe that making sure that we have mental health access in our schools is important. It's the studies show that if our students have access to mental health services in their school building, they are 6 times more likely to seek it, because you have removed the barriers for families of transportation, insurance costs, scheduling, all of those things. And so I really do think that we can focus on delivering mental health supports within our school systems, and that can really help our young people to be able to access it more than they are right now.
Another person, and I like to go from policy and then maybe go back to the political side,
Okay.
go back and forth. But, James Comer is somebody, his name has popped up a lot on the Republican side. He is someone who a lot of Republicans, including our current agriculture commissioner, has encouraged openly to run. Kentucky's Congressman James Comer has actually said, he said this in an interview to me and others, he says, one reason people want me is I'm not from Louisville or Lexington. I have a rural base. He goes on to say, I don't think it's any secret. I'm very interested in that. He's actually pointed you out saying, and he said this, people talk about the governor's race and who the Democrats are going to nominate, and I mean, there's no question in my mind it's going to be Jackie Coleman, the lieutenant governor. In your mind, have you thought about that possibility, going up against him in a general election?
Well, first I would say the lieutenant governor's name is Jacqueline Coleman, not Jackie Coleman.
I noticed he said Jackie. Said Jackie.
I think that might be a political tactic, but I would say the same thing about the general election as I would about the primary. Whoever gets in this race will get in this race. They will have to defend the things that they have stood up for, the things that they have voted on, the decisions that they have made in offices in the past. And I'm, again, going to stay focused on Kentuckians.
There's one Republican strategist we bring in for election coverage. We bring in a Democrat and a Republican to sort of analyze. And she told me, quote, where is her record of executive leadership, referencing you, policy accomplishment, or even statewide visibility? And I would argue she has had 0. These are strong words that she has. What would you say, not in response to her necessarily, but anybody who may have that critique specifically from the GOP side?
Yeah. Well, at my launch, I was introduced by Lieutenant Governor Currit Llewellyn, and that meant so much to me because I look up to her so much as someone who is a mentor and a trailblazer and one of the most ethical and stand-up public servants we've had in Kentucky. And to hear the words that she said about me and the leadership I've provided in the Beshear Coleman administration really meant a lot. Lieutenant governors are a lot like assistant coaches and assistant principals. We are working towards the mission of the administration, and we do what we can do, what the governor needs us to do to be able to move the ball down the field. For me, that has been in a wide variety of ways. So most people will look to education first, right? For me, because I'm a teacher. I was the lead voice in fighting against Amendment 2 in Kentucky when we were faced with the constitutional amendment to bring in school vouchers. That amendment failed in every single one of Kentucky's 120 counties by double digits, except for one. and it still failed there. So I would argue that I'm in touch with where the voters are. I was able to be on the ground after the natural disasters in West Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky. Learned in that process by listening to our first responders that we were one of 7 states that did not have a search and rescue team. They called a USAR team. And so I worked with the executive branch, I worked with the first responders and with legislators to get a bill that they had been trying to get passed since 2011 after the West Liberty tornadoes. It had never even been heard in the legislature. We got it passed in both chambers unanimously and signed into law by the governor. And now Kentucky has a statewide coordinated response with local officials, National Guard, first responders, swift boats, all of the folks that normally are kind of hodgepodge put together to help save people's lives. And they've done an amazing job. They need support. And so now we have a statewide coordinated effort that is going to save lives. It's going to create more effective and efficient responses. And so to be able to take a situation that nobody's been able to move since 2011 and to get a unanimous vote in both chambers and signed by the governor, that's a pretty important thing to do when lives are at stake. I led the charge in our administration for paid family leave. For the first time in history, we now have paid family leave for state employees for adoption, for birth, for a serious diagnosis. I also led the charge to create the Team Kentucky internship program to bring young people into our administration, make sure they understand all of the different varieties of ways that they can work in state government, whether it's as an engineer or a medical professional or someone who is an environmental scientist, right? So opening all of those doors to young people, I think, has been really important as well. And then I've made, when we were first elected, the governor really started to focus on economic development and job creation. So under that umbrella, I said, I'm going to focus on rural economic development and job creation because I'm from a small town and I know what it means when you get to announce something like 12 jobs or 25 jobs for a small community. Kentucky is number 3 in the nation in rural economic job creation. And so I think that speaks volumes to having a voice of someone who has a lived experience that brings it to the table and uses it to help create jobs all across Kentucky.
Last couple here real quick. I have to go back to the governor just for a second. And I have to ask, are you confident you will have his support in this race, and have you asked for it?
Just wait.
Just wait. All right. So we'll maybe later this year or the next year?
Just wait.
Well, because I know he says he can't do it before his time at the DGA is done, which would give about, 5 months into next year, potentially?
Yeah.
What do you think the governor's going to do in 2028?
I think he's got some options that he is exploring.
Yeah.
And right now, I know he's focused on leading Kentucky. He is focused on helping to get Democratic governors elected across the country. And so we'll see how all of that pans out.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, 6th congressional district, the 6th congressional race in Kentucky. We know that you have backed Jacqueline Stevenson as the Democratic candidate who you believe should win the primary. I believe you were the first person to endorse in that race, or at least you did very, very quickly after her launch. I noticed that Jim Gray, who's a member of the Beshear administration as well, endorsed Zach Denbo, another Democrat in this race. Why do you think that there is explain the sort of divide, the house divided, I guess, so to speak here?
I don't know. I don't think of it as a house divided. I mean, we're all unique people that have our own roles and our own perspectives, and that's completely fair, right? But I know that I endorsed Jacqueline Stevenson because she is the only candidate in the race that has flipped a seat from red to blue. She's the only candidate in the race I have worked with as she fought on the House floor to defend public education, to fight for women's reproductive rights, to ensure that everybody could see a doctor when they're sick in Kentucky. And I think that's a really important thing to know about someone. And when it comes to electing someone to send to Congress, it's been a very long time, because I grew up in the 6th congressional district. It's been a very long time since we've had a candidate who has traveled the district, sat down and asked voters what they're looking for, and listened and promised to deliver and take those voices with them to D.C. And that's exactly who I think Jacqueline is.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Jacqueline Coleman, Kentucky's Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Isaiah.